everybody. This is Monica Perez, and we are here to continue our discussion of Saucers of the Illuminati by the great OG of conspiracy research, Jim Keith. Gotta love him. And this book seems appropriate for the big reveal that's coming about UFOs in November. He's got a lot to say about it. And this guy was really ahead of his time. So I love to hear what he has to say. And we really covered a lot of ground on our first installment. And we are on chapter 4. And the title of chapter 4 is Infiltration. But before I get to that, I want to ask you that if you enjoy this quirky little series of us reading and discussing books for Saturday Storytime, which also occurs live on your favorite video platform on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. But if you like it, give me a review or something on your favorite, or even just stars on your favorite podcasting platform. Get me up in the searches so that I get more listeners and people listen to commercials, and that helps defray my cost of production. But you can get it all commercial free on Substack, Monica Perez Show, with also premium features such as highlight reels from when I talk to other people on their shows. My favorite is Monica's Movies with Scott and Bobby. We are doing Invasion of the Body Snatchers for Halloween. That should be fun, but we've got quite a few in the can already. So if you want to go and hear what we had to say about the greatest propaganda film of all time, Casablanca, check it out on Substack. But you can also find that on the premium subscriber feed on iTunes. And with that, let's go on with the show. All right. Although the forces that appear to dominate UFO research seem to prefer that everyone maintain a gosh, wow, aliens are among us approach that beyond disinformational purposes also serves in marketing to the slack-jawed yokels with underbites. Jim, this is your bread and butter here. You can't call them slack-jawed yokels. It certainly has expanded beyond slack-jawed locals, if you ask me. Or maybe he's just speaking tongue-in-cheek. There seem to be certain forces afoot today other than just gray aliens. Although thus far we are only able to evaluate circumstantial evidence of UFOs being connected to human occupants rather than aliens and the military, there are a number of accounts of the military attempting to infiltrate public UFO research organizations, apparently in an attempt to monitor and disinform the field and to delude the public at large on the subject of UFOs. Well, we can see them doing that in alt media for every down the rabbit hole subject. Okay. On a number of occasions, the UFO field has been infiltrated by military intelligence personnel and well-known UFO, quote, researchers, possibly even the majority of the prominent ones, have loyalties that seem not to reside with the UFO research community or with the truth. Again, it reminds me of something that's happening right now. In the early 1950s, H. Marshall Caldwell, then acting as Assistant Director for Scientific Intelligence for the CIA, panned the following memo to CIA Director Walter Smith. Caldwell wrote, "With world sightings reported, it was found that up to the time of the investigation, there had been in the Soviet press no report or comment, even satirical, on flying saucers, though Gromyko had made one humorous mention of the subject. With a state-controlled press, this could result only from an official policy decision. The question, therefore, arises as to whether or not these sightings, 1, could be controlled, 2, could be predicted, and 3, could be used from a psychological warfare point of view, either offensively or defensively. The public concerns with the phenomena, which is reflected both in the United States press and in the pressure of inquiry upon the Air Force, indicates that a fair proportion of our population is mentally conditioned to the acceptance of the incredible. In this fact lies the potential for the touching off of mass hysteria and panic." Great! Just what we always wanted. "A study should be instituted to determine what, if any, utilization could be made of these phenomena by United States psychological warfare planners. So this is documented in the 50s. This is the assistant director for scientific intelligence for the CIA, whatever that means, right? It's not research, it's intelligence, to the CIA director in the 50s. So, I mean, not that we didn't know what the OSS was all about, but now you can see that the CIA was, from the beginning, not a defensive measure, let's say. In the book Clear Intent, authors Fawcett and Greenwood detail the destruction of the early civilian UFO investigative group, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, NICAP, by government intelligence agents. They cite the involvement in the group of Nicholas de Rochefort, a member of the psychological warfare staff of the CIA, Vice Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, a director of the CIA, and Bernard J.O. Carvalho, another apparent CIA asset. They describe the removal of Donald Kehoe as NICAP's director in 1969 and point to the actions of chairman of the board, Colonel Joseph Bryan, former chief of the CIA psychological warfare staff, as being instrumental in Kehoe's ouster. They also note that John Acuff, the head of the Society of Photographic Scientists and Engineers, connected to Defense Department intelligence units and the CIA, was the man who replaced Kehoe. Acuff seems to have defanged NICAP as far as the government was concerned, turning it into a sightings collection group without a trace of its earlier governmentally critical policy, an approach that eventually drove the organization out of business. Acuff was replaced by Alan Hall, retired from the CIA, with the group eventually being dissolved. Further investigation of a government manipulation of UFO researchers must include a mention of William Moore, the co-author of the Philadelphia experiment and of the Roswell incident, as well as editor until recently of Far Out magazine, published by Larry Flint of Hustler fame. Moore, who continues to be a medium-weight pop star of the UFO research field, for reasons which remain unclear to me, admitted at the 1989 MUFON Symposium that he had functioned as an agent for members of the U.S. military, reporting on at least one UFO group and involved individuals in exchange for leaked, quote, allegedly secret government documents about UFOs. To me, this is astounding. The only reason I can imagine that Moore might betray his own activities in this way is that he feared that someone else was going to, quote, out him as working with the government, and he was attempting damage control by his voluntary admission. Yes, I think they do that. I think that's actually the norm now. So the first thing someone will tell you is, well, I was in the service, or, former member of some administration or other, because if they find out without you telling them, then there's no cover story. And I think that's the thing. Like, I think I got that kind of from Report from Iron Mountain. They said somewhere, we don't even make it top secret because we don't want it to look like we're hiding something. And besides, even if it got out, no one would really do anything or be able to do anything. So it's an interesting, it's almost a weaponization of cognitive dissonance in a way. Okay. Other information on Moore involves the matter of UFO researcher Paul Benowitz. This is big. Paul Benowitz, a self-employed electronics expert, believed that he had discovered alien technology in action at Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico and contacted the military in an attempt to alert them. Benowitz was apparently fed a series of documents outlining military collaboration with the aliens and other matters that are currently the stock and trade of the aliens are among us and polluting our vital body fluids and of the UFO research spectrum. I mean, this stuff is straight out of the X-Files. I don't think this guy, he says in the beginning, oh, didn't he say that he put, like, basically puked out a version in I always call, like, your first draft the vomit draft. I tell my kids, just I'm gonna start writing. I'm like, just barf, just vomit all over the pages. That's your vomit draft, and just get all your ideas out. So he basically had a vomit draft of this book that he put out in 1993, which was before the X-Files went into all of this. So I think this might be a call for me to go back and get that 1993 edition. See, this is why I usually do get the first editions of things, and he's had a couple of editions of a couple of things. But I better remember before our next meeting. Okay, according to Moore, Benowitz was the subject of considerable interest on the part of not one, but several government agencies. And I discovered, I think this is a parenthetical, like a box. I discovered, like a square brackets. I discovered they were actively, I think Moore is saying he discovered they were actively trying to defuse him by pumping as much disinformation through him as he could possibly absorb. Again, foreshadowing of what absolutely happened after 9/11. And remember, Keith was dead by 9/11. But this is cognitive infiltration, just like Cass Sunstein and Adrian Vermeule, Harvard professor and head of the Catholic integralism movement, just like what they cooked up for Obama in order to discredit 9/11 truth. This guy's describing I would say, the beta of that in the UFO field. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were preparing cognitive infiltration, because I don't think Cass Sunstein's memo is just sat there and they just licked their pencils and figured it out. It's probably something that's already being done. And it makes more sense for them to unroll it at this time when they have the USA Patriot Act and other things like that, that are starting to come down. Okay, so in case you're interested in looking this guy up, Paul Benowitz, it's Bennewitz. It says, Moore admits that he knew that Benowitz was being disinformed by the government, and with evidence suggesting that Special Agent Richard Doty, D-O-T-Y, was at least partially responsible. But according to his own admission, he took no action to disabuse Benowitz of the lies that Moore says were gradually driving him crazy. Benowitz got to the point where he believed that aliens were invading his house and poisoning him. He gradually broke down from the disinformational and perhaps other attacks until he was put into a psychiatric hospital. So they literally drove this guy crazy. And before we were all aware of the stuff the government was up to, people did go crazy with the cognitive dissonance, really did make them lose their minds. And maybe now it doesn't make us actually lose our minds, but it makes people a little kooky, like, rising damp, rising kooky. But look up the case of Casey. Was it Catherine Casey, the woman who worked for Norman Dodd and Renee Wormser? Looking into the Carnegie Endowment and how they plotted to get the U.S. involved in World War I. She went nuts because she was just shockingly disillusioned by the true nature of power in the United States. Sergeant Richard Doty, one of Moore's contacts who was involved in the Benowitz matter, was a special agent with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. During the course of his employment with AFOSI, he invited Linda Moulton Howe, a well-known investigator of cattle mutilations, who oddly never seems to bring up the government connection, to visit him at Kirtland. Once Howe had arrived at the Air Force Base, Doty showed her alleged secret documents that seemed to reveal information on crashed alien vehicles and their occupants. According to Howe, she says, this is a quote from her, "These pages contained a summary of this government's retrieval of crashed discs and alien bodies, including a live alien from a crash near Roswell in 1949. The paper said that this extraterrestrial had been taken to Los Alamos National Laboratory, where it had been kept until it died of unknown causes on June 18th, 1952. Then the paper summarized some of the information that had been learned from this distinctly alien life form about our planet and its civilization's involvement with this planet. One of the paragraphs said, all questions and mysteries about the evolution of Homo sapiens on this planet have been answered, and this project is closed. Oh my gosh. I think that's what the hieroglyphs on the side of the alien artifact in the later years of the X-Files, I think that's what they were getting at. I mean, this is really kind of crazy. I mean, it's either Jim Keith and the X-Files both were inspired by the truth, or one copied the other. I don't think there's any other possible explanation. And I think it's either they're both inspired by the truth or the X-Files copied Jim Keith, but I think it's the former. All right. Further, Howe is saying, it's stated in the paper that these gray extraterrestrials had been personally involved in the genetic manipulation of already evolving primates on this planet, suggesting that Cro-Magnon was the result of genetic manipulation by the gray extraterrestrials. Another meeting was arranged between, this is after the quote of Howe, another meeting was arranged between Captain Robert Collins, Howe, and John Lear, the UFO expert and former employee of the CIA. Lear is the man who has done more than anyone, including Bill Cooper, to convince the public that aliens are among us, living in huge underground bases and collaborating with the government to put us all in the vat-prepared soup. Collins furnished Lear and Howe with more alleged secret documents on the aliens and mentioned to her that he had worked with William Moore for years. It also is within the sphere of William Moore's influence that the bogus MJ-12 paper, a faked 1947 presidential briefing document on crashed saucers, surfaced. 1947. So was that still Truman? I think it had to still be Truman. Because didn't Ike supposedly have a meeting on this? All right. Bill Cooper and Philip Marshall. Bill Cooper was supposedly gunned down in a crazy, weird way, basically an assassination. Philip Marshall, who wrote The Big Bamboozle, the murder-suicide I mentioned last time, those guys were in on it, but they also were killed for it. So when somebody gets assassinated, it doesn't mean they weren't in on it. And I always, think of JFK and Reagan and Nixon in that coup, for that matter. So John, frightening me is saying John works for Air America, I'm pretty sure. John Lear, Lear. Yes, oh my gosh, Stella. Stella from Down Under telling us about our president. The U.S. president in 1947 was Harry S. Truman, the 33rd president. So I'm going to give you a little fact. The S has no period next to it because it didn't stand for anything. How do you like that? Ever since I learned that, I no longer spell Ms. MS. Not that I'm going out of my way to use that with a period, because it doesn't deserve a period either, because it doesn't stand for anything. Let's see. So the reason I was late is that I have a little issue. So I used to have a lot of help with my my giant baby, and I really don't have that much help anymore. So I have to keep an eye on him myself. And when his little transportation gets screwed up, I'm on the job. Let me make sure we edit this out. Nobody on the podcast needs to hear this. All right, babes. So he just walked in, so I will give the dog 5 seconds to start barking his head off. So welcome to my world of torture. Nice. Make aliens great again. Thank you, Eversor. All right, chapter 5, MJ-12. So Keith is putting that at the feet of Moore, and here we go. In mid-1987, when UFO buffs first got the MJ-12 document in their hands, many of them thought that they were fondling the holy grail of UFO research. This photo reproduction of an 8-page alleged government document is purported to be a preliminary briefing on UFOs for President-elect Eisenhower, released on November 18th, 1952. It was Eisenhower! Also officially the first day of the formation of the CIA. It was Eisenhower. Stella, thank you. Thank you. I am human. Unlike Stella said, your life stories make us know you are indeed still human. Yes, I very much so. But I was watching a video of the wife of somebody. I don't know if you guys saw this very strange video that looked kind of AI and just very strange. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Unlike other people I've been observing lately, I am human. Okay. The MJ-12 document was allegedly used to brief Eisenhower by Rear Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter, said to be a member of Majestic 12, a top secret research team composed of scientists and military men empowered to investigate UFOs. The MJ-12 document claims that in July 1947, an alien disc craft crashed in Roswell, New Mexico, and that a second craft crashed on the Texas-Mexico border in 1950. Okay. Having not heard the dog bark, I am now worried. Okay. Yeah, okay. From where did this historic and apparently earth-shaking MJ-12 document originate? Yeah, see, that's the thing. Stuff just pops up way, way after the fact. So you've got to figure that's suspect, in my opinion. All right. In December 1984, a roll of undeveloped 35mm black and white film was received in the mail in Burbank, California by Jamie or Jaime Shandera, a television producer. Shandera has said that the package was postmarked at Albuquerque, New Mexico. The roll of film was developed by Shandera and William Moore. How would she even know to contact William Moore until she developed the film? Anyway, who found photo images of the pages of the MJ-12 document. Oh, maybe this is what got him into it. All right, I'll try not to jump ahead. No, seriously. Sorry. All right. Okay. The first publication of a portion of the MJ-12 document appeared in the London Observer newspaper on May 31st, 1987. A small portion of the document was printed in an article by Martin Bailey titled, thank you, it's titled, it is not entitled, thank you, Close Encounters of an Alien Kind. And now, if you've read enough about the election, here's news from another world. The article was reprinted in many American newspapers in the weeks that followed. According to British UFO researcher Timothy Good, he was the first to publish the complete MJ-12 document in his book Above Top Secret in May 1987. I might have that. Where did Good get his copy? He stated, I received the document from a CIA source in March of 1987. When queried as to whether the CIA source had anything to do with William Moore, Good responded, I am sure. Oh, absolutely. The document was published and republished in magazines, analyzed, touted as extraterrestrial gospel, decried as a hoax, but it captivated the imaginations of many UFO researchers and injected life into an ailing UFO research field to a degree that had not been seen since the halcyon days of the 1960s. Great. For those UFO buffs who are interested in objective evaluation, the fact that no original copy of the MJ-12 document is available is only one of the difficulties in proving or disproving its validity. Because of this fact, no evaluation of the authenticity of signatures, paper, or ink can be made. And I would say it makes sense that there was all UFO stuff in the 60s because that's when they wanted to send us to the moon. So, what were they up to in the 80s? The document also is suspiciously similar to a description of the one that was shown to Linda Moulton Howe at Kirtland Air Force Base, if a more refined version. Other details suggest that the document is a hoax. The dating format is a mixed civilian and military style, as for instance in the date 18, November, 1952. The military format would be 18 November, 1952. Lacking the added comma. Single-digit dates also have an added 0 inserted before them in the MJ-12 document, a practice that did not come into use in the military until the 1970s. That's a big tell. That is what they call an anachronism. As pointed out by debunker Philip J. Klass, with a K, in available examples of Hill and Cotter letters and memoranda, the conventional military date format is used. Also, according to Klass, so the person who supposedly wrote that in other documents did not have such errors. Also, according to Klass, a Los Angeles document examiner has determined that the typewriter used to type the MJ-12 document was not available before 1963. Researcher Kevin Randall points out another significant discrepancy in the MJ-12 document. The document is constructed as a briefing paper for President-elect Eisenhower, suggesting that Eisenhower had no knowledge of the Roswell crash. The problem is that Eisenhower, as the Army Chief of Staff in July 1947, would have been completely aware of the Roswell crash. The MJ-12 report does not resemble in style or substance anything else that I have seen originating from the government, and I have examined hundreds of government documents originating from the same period, many of them dealing with UFOs. The document is also not written in typical bureaucratese, that elusive jargon so valued in government circles. The main problem with the MJ-12 document for me, however, is that it solves too much, wrapping up too many of the loose ends of the contemporary UFO controversy and proving exactly what most UFO buffs already know. Little new information is offered on the alleged saucer crashes themselves, which is rather odd given the fact that this constitutes our first clear look inside the, quote, cosmic Watergate so touted by Moore, Stanton Friedman, and others. If this, in fact, is a briefing provided to Eisenhower, then it is a comic book briefing that would have raised far more questions in the president-elect's minds than it answered. The loose ends that are wrapped up in the document also neatly intersect with the specific stated beliefs and investigative involvement of the men most closely associated with the report: Shandora, Moore, and Friedman. After the publication of the MJ-12 briefing documents, another unsigned document was allegedly discovered in the National Archives, dated July 14, 1954. This is a purported memo to General Nathan Twining, Air Force Chief of Staff, from Robert Cutler, Eisenhower's Special Assistant for National Security. This document states, the President has decided that the MJ-12 SSP briefing should take place during the already scheduled White House meeting of July 16th, rather than following it as previously intended. The alleged memo was unsigned, with Cutler's name and title typed at the page bottom. Advocates of the authenticity of the original MJ-12 pages claim that the Cutler memo provides proof positive that the document and the alleged secret MJ-12 consulting group was real, while detractors suggest that the memo is just another fake. The authenticity of the Cutler memo, the supposed confirmation, is doubtful. Advocate Stanton Friedman insists that the memo is real because it was in a classified box in a classified vault. But this only points up Friedman's willingness to overlook the obvious in his anxiety to verify the MJ-12 document. What would have stopped someone from carrying the Cutler memo in with them when examining the supposedly secured box? Joanne Williamson, chief of the Military Reference Branch, has indicated that this particular document poses problems in a number of ways. Williamson points out that it is not typed on government letterhead and does not have a watermark. That's big. It does not have a top secret registration number. It is the single document with a notation about MJ12 in the folder in which it was found. The marking top secret restricted information attached to it was not used until many years after the Eisenhower administration. And Robert Cutler was traveling in Europe and North Africa on the day the memo was supposedly issued. Other significant, but it didn't have a signature on it. So you could, I don't know. Other significant factors, possibly the most significant in the evaluation of the authenticity of the MJ12 documents and the Cutler memo, are the associations of their recipient and primary disseminators. Jamie Shandera, who reportedly received the film containing images of the MJ12 document, had in 1990 been involved in pre-production for a fictional movie about UFOs with Stanton Friedman and William Moore. Some rash souls have suggested that the production of the MJ12 document may have been their next fictional foray. Shandera had also, quote, been working closely with Bill Moore and myself on the Roswell crash, according to Friedman. Shandera and Moore had both been in contact with Richard Doty, who was at the time of the MJ12 documents release, working for the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Doty was trained in disinformation and psychological warfare and allegedly a self-admitted member of a disinformation group. According to published reports, Moore has stated that Doty reported to a Pentagon official named Hennessy, reportedly chief of security for the Stealth Project. That's capital S. It is impossible to gauge Doty's actual connections since portions of his service records are censored. Although while stationed in Lindsey Air Force Base in West Germany, according to Class, Doty was charged with falsifying official documents and telling falsehoods to his commanding officer. A formal investigation confirmed these charges, and Doty was decertified as a special agent with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations and returned to Kirtland AFB in late 1986. Doty spent his last 2 years before retirement in food services management. Doty was allegedly involved in an earlier UFO hoax regarding a sighting near Kirtland Air Force Base in 1980. An anonymous letter purporting to be from an airman and indicating that the same information had been submitted to the Office of Special Investigations was sent to a UFO organization. According to researcher Robert Hastings, careful analysis of the anonymous letter reveals that it was almost certainly typed on the same typewriter used by Doty. According to Dr. Bruce Maccabee of the Fund for UFO Research, Doty also confessed to William Moore that he had been involved in another hoaxed UFO incident called the Ellsworth case, and that he had forged documents and submitted them to researchers as authentic. Funny, if you start thinking about that stuff as being totally fake, the moon landing as being totally fake, these guys faking this stuff, and I think Stella might appreciate this, it makes you realize, like, these ideas of transhumanism or like AGI, whatever, like real intelligent AI, that this stuff it's fantastical. And I'm not saying it positively is, but I'm just saying the more like seeing this stuff shrinks the universe and our reach, the more preposterous some of their claims become, especially since they're the ones promoting this. Okay, so Eversource is saying NASA found traces of life on Mars, which I definitely question. I question if they're on Mars, and they don't care about the Nazca mummies. Against my better judgment, I got in a little plane and circled the Nazca to see the Nazca lines. Don't ever get in little planes. Just don't. Helicopters, don't do any of that. Not going to get into it, but just don't do it. All right. Was Doty or the OSI the source of the MJ12 documents? Did he forge them? No conclusive proof exists. But the plot continues to thicken. Researcher Lee Graham has reportedly said that William Moore had contacted him in an intelligence capacity and that he worked for the government in releasing sensitive UFO information. According to Graham, Moore had flashed a Defense Investigation Service badge, although Stanton Friedman, in his 1996 MJ-12 Apologia titled Top Secret / Magic, puts a different spin on the event. Friedman says, quote, as a joke, Bill once pulled out a MUFON identification card, flashed it at Lee, and indicated that he was working for the government. Lee bought it. This sidesteps the issue of this alleged impersonation of a government official, exactly, as well as Graham's memory of a government badge, not a MUFON card. Friedman carefully sidesteps these matters in his defense of a person who has otherwise admitted to collaborating with agents of the government. And there might be something about flashing your badge. Like I told them. They knew that they were speaking to an agent of the government. Could be something there. You're trying to entrap somebody or whatever. Another issue that Friedman does not approach in Top Secret Magic is Moore's association with men claiming to be Air Force intelligence. Although I was not present at the 1989 MUFON conference at which William Moore spoke, Jacques Vallée was and offered the following description. Here's a quote from Jacques. In a confused and embarrassing presentation before the MUFON conference, Bill Moore indeed confessed that he had willingly allowed himself to be used by various people claiming to act on behalf of Air Force intelligence and that he had knowingly disseminated disinformation, although he has never been, quote, on the payroll. This is a mere play on words, of course. Not being on the payroll does not mean that he was not paid in cash or through other means. Moore gave a weak excuse for his actions, claiming that he had acted in a heroic private affair to infiltrate and ultimately expose the operation. That's the end of the quote from Vallée. Does Friedman avoid bringing up these matters because they provide additional evidence that the MJ-12 document is a hoax, or simply because he is Moore's friend? It is impossible to know, although Friedman's recent career as a, quote, UFO expert has been largely based on protesting too much about the discrepancies in MJ-12. Although the MJ-12 document has not been conclusively proven to be a fake, the weight of evidence suggests that this is the case. More significantly, to be given serious consideration in order to be factored in as valid data into any real evaluation of the nature of UFOs, it must be proven to be real. And this certainly has not taken place. In a sense, it doesn't matter if the MJ-12 document or the Cutler memo are proven to be counterfeit, since the majority of UFO true believers will continue to believe what they want despite any facts to the contrary. My experience is that a significant portion of the UFO hobbyist community use their obsession as a form of excitement for the feeling of being, quote, in the know, and as a substitute for a life. Deep down, they hope that we are being invaded by evil aliens. Oh my gosh! I just read an article this morning about the Charlie Kirk assassination. I'm gonna pull it up lickety split because it just totally echoes that. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't spend the time, but if I can't pull it up in 1 second, and I think I can. And here it is. Okay. Okay. So this says Charlie Kirk's assassination unleashes the anti-social media. Our newly democratized digital discourse seems on track to turn its way French Revolution style terror. I'm actually going to talk to Hervoye and Mike about this in tomorrow's Cognitive Dissidence, which will probably come out, whatever. If you're listening to Saturday Story Time, it's probably already out. Okay, she says, want to play the conspiracy game? She said, come in and relive in gaudy color the brutal sounds of someone being killed and the visions and all that. Feed your fantasies. Look at your conspiracies, slow-mo action. What's the strange mark that appears and disappears on his t-shirt? What are they doing behind them with their curious hand movements, etc.? And the writer says, if they were honest, the conspiracists would admit that they just love it when these things happen. But sorry to say, so do more and more of us. The opportunity to confect and amplify some fable is a temptation that too easily overwhelms simple decencies of respect for shattered life and family, or the wider sensitivities humans are supposed to have. I understand that, but they're also feeding the crap out of that. And if you want to talk about the family, do not watch that video from the family. Anyway, sorry, it's just weird that, I mean, I think that they've weaponized everything, and that what's in here, this is all like foreshadowing practice for what was to come. And I think they study this stuff. And Jim Keith really had his finger on the pulse of all of this, and he just observed that people love it. But the people who exploit it observe that they love it and then exploit it. That aside, it is obvious that the government is attempting to defuse UFO investigations by overwhelming them with incendiary disinformation and by having informants report on the activities of groups and individuals. This is happening too. I won't keep getting sidetracked, but all over. So I'm doing all this research on like what the agenda items are happening right now. And tons of it is about turning people in, about being responsible for the actions of others, about firing people who you don't like what they wrote on social media, or the public doesn't like what your employees wrote on social media. There is just a ton of this kind of second order responsibility for someone else's speech. And it's designed not only to, there's some stuff that's designed for us to chill, but this is for you to police other people, to turn people in. Tell, like Pam Bondi or whatever the Trump administration is saying, if you see a coworker or a fellow student, something like that, write something on social media that you don't like, you should turn them in and get them fired. And, and then they want, I don't know what they have in store, but she's saying, this should not be allowed, is what they're kind of saying. So it looks like they baked all this stuff up a while back. This is from 40 years ago. 40, yeah. This is no longer the matter of conjecture that has buzzed among UFO researchers since the earliest days of these investigations. Now there is more than enough proof to show that this is the case. This disinformation, this cognitive infiltration, I will call it. Providing more support for the idea that UFO abductions may have more to do with humans than aliens, we do know that the American government, at least, is in possession of top secret aircraft of a radically different type than orthodox aircraft, and that these may include saucer craft. Certainly, there is much evidence to show that advanced disc craft designs confiscated from the Germans after World War II may have been put into production. Why were they making discs? It is only in recent years that the existence of this kind of aircraft has been able to be fairly easily verified by observation outside the military installation known as Area 51 in Nevada. Before this sort of testing moved on to other regions, large crowds would gather outside this military preserve for UFO watching parties. There, on many nights, Wednesday was said to be the most active night for the flights. One was able to observe strange aircraft doing aerial maneuvers that would have been impossible for the unclassified aircraft of which we are aware. But that does not make these craft extraterrestrial, nor does it make them extraterrestrial human technological hybrids. It does make it obvious, however, that the people who maintain that this is the case without a shred of hard evidence are blithering idiots. Man, this guy's harsh. Everstory says, Greer says abductions are all CIA. Not sure about that claim. I don't think Jim Keith is either, but he doesn't like people who don't require evidence. Frightening Me points out they hammered the 33 hours until the suspect was in custody over and over again. There were so many dog whistles in this story. Even the stuff that people are saying make the thing look fake. I don't think it was fake, but I think that making it seem fake is part of the thing. But they let us see the whole thing probably because it's a real one, and they want to make sure that that's still a possibility, because if they're all really fake and everybody knows it, they'll lose their power. And what they want is to scare people, chill people, whatever. But maybe they're nailing a squirrel to the tree. Hey, if you say the wrong thing or go off the reservation, we're going to kill you. And even if we didn't kill him, we could have. That's what I think is part of some of the narratives that are out there right now. All right, the relatively common occurrence of garden variety humans being seen in the vicinity of, entering and leaving, and sometimes piloting UFOs may be another significant clue as to the meaning and origin of these crafts. Many operations which are said to take place inside the saucers and performed by alien beings are in fact carbon copies of the kind of operations performed on the restraining tables of psychiatrists in the employ of the CIA. Jim Keith knows all about that stuff, and so do we, having read Mind Control, Mass Control. Right down to the reports of tiny electronic brain implants inserted through the nose. That was Delgado, right? Yeah, there it is. The standard insertion technique for both brain control shrinks, as exemplified by Dr. Jose Delgado, the originator of the technique, and so we are told, the gray aliens. 6, a symbolic odyssey. It has been established, I think, that there are aspects of the UFO mystery that owe more to the activities of humans than extraterrestrials. But my purpose is not simply to show that human forces of some sort, perhaps the CIA, are hoaxing the populace into believing that the aliens are here and pose a threat to the well-being of mankind. I'm hoping to provide a look into the purpose behind the hoaxing. There are strange clues that need to be examined in detail. These involve a tangled web of symbolism in the UFO mythos that, fortunately, resolves into a single meaning. Trust me on this. As I cite each reference in this symbolic odyssey, I will try to distill the relevant images that will assist in forming a conclusion. In the incredible account, quote, "My life depends on you," which has circulated widely in the underground press, Marty Koski describes the experience of literally going mad. In 1975, he began to be plagued by unwanted voices that he believed were being broadcast from the hotel room above him. It's exactly what happened with Alexis. What was that guy's name? Who was the Navy Yard shooter? That was super fishy. Assuming that he was experiencing a neurotic bout, he put up with the voices until, in the late summer of 1979, his mental torture escalated. Now, Koski found that he was losing control of his bodily functions and that his senses were being scrambled. His heartbeat became erratic to the point that he entered the University of Alberta Hospital in Edmonton, Canada. Once checked into the hospital, the voice in his head identified itself, claiming to be a spokesman for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and telling Koski that he had been chosen to be a spy. The voice dubbed Koski the Microwave Man. Koski claims that while in the hospital, bizarre experiments were performed on him by the doctors, while, in the meantime, interior voices were telling him to perform acts like stealing shirts and engaging in covert sales of cigarettes to other patients. After leaving the hospital, Koski attempted to escape the barrage of voices by traveling to his native Finland. But to no avail, the voices did not let up. After 18 years of psychic attack, Koski has, to a degree, learned to live with it. In Finland, he works with other individuals who claim that they have been victims of government mind control experimentation, some of them being able to back up their claims with x-rays that seem to show tiny mushroom-shaped brain implants. That's a lot like Gillian Anderson, Dana Scully. What is the difference, though, between a paranoid schizophrenic and this kind of thing? Because as I mentioned, when I was traveling, I was in an airport bar, smoking lounge, actually, and somebody came up to me saying people were after him and we better keep our heads down. My son, who has experience with this because he does EMT stuff, He said, "Oh," I was like, "That guy, what kind of scam is he running?" He said, "He's a paranoid schizophrenic." He said he runs into it regularly. And you have to say, like, I believe you think that. I don't believe it's true, or something more obvious. My son says, like, I believe that you see spiders on the ceiling, but I don't see them. And it's as simple as that. So let's see what else he's got. Jim. Jim and I are very in sync. Koski's plight may be interpreted in at least two ways. He may be simply crazy, and the voices may be entirely the product of his own mind. The lucidness of his written account of his ordeal, however, argues against this possibility. He may also be correct in his conclusions. He may be mind controlled by, as he suspects, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Certainly, there is a huge body of literature detailing the activities of government intelligence operations on civilians, and there is proof that brain implants, in fact, actually are performed, including numerous X-ray photos of tiny, otherwise unexplainable brain implants. It's also interesting that the most infamous of doctors working in the CIA MK Ultra mind control experiments of the 1950s was Dr. Ewan Cameron. His horrendous experimentation performed at his Gothic Ravenscrag facility in Montreal, Canada. But there is an additional strange element to the Koski story that may provide a piece to the puzzle that we are researching. After Koski returned to Finland, the voices he was hearing began to tell him a different story. Now they told him that they weren't RCMP at all. They were beings from the Dog Star. Sirius gives us all the propaganda we could ever. I wasn't talking to you, Siri. I was talking about Sirius, the propaganda outlet platform. So Koski's been. She does that to me every time I talk about anything that remotely sounds like her name. So Koski is being mind manipulated by extraterrestrials. There are further. Oh, they switched it. There are further symbolic linkages on this speculative trail that may or may not lead to the stars. At the beginning of this century, contact with the Sirius star system was claimed by the occultist Lucien Francois Jean Maine, who, through the famous occultist Pepys, learned the rituals of the Ordo Templi Orientis Lodge, founded by Aleister Crowley, and formed his own group in his native Haiti. Jean Maine is said to have, in 1922, combined the OTO rituals with voodoo practices to form the cult of the Black Snake in Haiti. He also claimed to be in contact with a disembodied being, or voodoo loa, named Lamb, an entity who OTO Grandmaster Kenneth Grant said was one of the great old ones. I've seen that name before. I don't even like reading this stuff. You know that, right? I don't like it. An elder, as well as eldritch god, nigh identical with those portrayed by the American horror writer H.P. Lovecraft in the 20s and 30s. Well, there are a lot of sci-fi writers in that circuit, right? L. Ron Hubbard was a sci-fi writer. Heinlein was some kind of spook, etc. Lamb, according to Grant, has the task of uniting the current that emanates from the Andromeda Galaxy with the current that flows from Sirius. Grant believed that a dimensional portal exists in the Andromeda Galaxy, and through this portal will enter the old ones. Demonic entities intent on returning Earth to their dominion and having humanity for breakfast. Prior to Jean Maine's contact with Lamb, the famous occultist and founder of the OTO, Aleister Crowley, reported that he had summoned the same entity through one of his own magical, with a K, workings. Crowley also penned a drawing of Lamb, reprinted in Kenneth Grant's The Magical Revival, adding another strange dimension to the now interdimensional puzzle. Crowley portrays the entity Lamb as a prototypical big-headed gray, That is, as the picture of modern popular conceptions about what a UFO alien is supposed to look like. Crowley relates Grant also unequivocally identifies his holy guardian angel with Sothis, Set Isis, also Sirius. Wait, Sothis, aka Sirius, or Set Isis. The obvious connection here is the significance of Sirius, although the Ordo Templi Orientis Lodge, Crowley, and Lamb also have their own special relevance. Evaluating this mishmash of occultism, who would imagine that the telepathic transmissions from Sirius might have something to do with military intelligence? Occult investigator James Shelby Downard, in his wonderful Sorcery, Sex, Assassination, and the Science of Symbolism, published in the author, Jim Keith's Secret and Suppressed Anthology. Oh, I heard that goes way off the deep end. If we really want to keep going with Keith, hat tip to James, we're going to have to read that one. Researches the existence of a Sirius worship cult that he believes exists at the highest levels of the CIA. He cites as one of their ritual locations the telescope viewing room of the Palomar Observatory in California. There he says, well, those guys hung out in Pasadena, Crowley and such. Oh, and Parsons, the rocket guy, sex and rockets, blew himself up. Satan worshiper, founded JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab, which is now NASA, which, like, from a certain angle, like, you're just driving along, like, you would never think anything's there. But if you happen to, like, be at a certain angle and there's no leaves on the trees, it's giant. Actually looks like they could be filming the Mars stuff right then and there. But I think they do that on Devon Island. There he says the adepts of the military intelligence cult enact rituals in the telescopically focused light of the dog star in imitation of the Egyptian priesthood, astral rays bathing the viewing chamber and the participants when the telescope is aimed Siriusward. Okay, by the way, I was talking to somebody, kind of in the schizo community saying, it's been proven the phone doesn't listen to you. Well, if it doesn't listen to me, how does it know when I'm saying its name? Just wondering. Oh, and I got a Quora thing in my inbox the other day, an email from Quora, which I keep turned on for what reason, just to stay in touch with really how crazy things are getting. It actually just like completely answered a question that I was asking, like whatever, at what temperature do you cook salmon or something? And I like literally got an email from Quora, like the best salmon I ever had was cooked to whatever, 135 degrees. I was like, okay, could you at least try? Just at least try not to, like, I just feel like I'm going to turn my corner one day. It's like some guy's going to be sitting there listening to me and writing everything down like an apparition, a hologram or something. All right. Utter madness. Utter madness? Tell that to Colonel Michael Aquino of U.S. military intelligence, the admitted head of the Satanic Temple of Set, a deity identified in occultism with Sirius. Aquino makes no bones. I think people call him Aquino, but it looks like Aquino to me. Aquino. Makes no bones about the fact that he is the head of his offshoot of Anton LaVey's Church of Satan, known to draw many of its leaders from military circles. Again, we see the strange conjunction of serious occultism and military intelligence. Gosh, I would just think that the whole thing was a military operation. But Keith's saying he thinks they're in it. Hey, my friend Noble. I should wear your shirt. I think your shirt's a little aggressive. I'll have to tell you about why. Aquino, yeah, I agree. So it's Aquino, or Aquino. I'm going Aquino. Gerald says he woke up last night at 2 a.m. and the green light indicating that his camera was active was on. Every once in a while, it will flash. Do you ever notice that? I don't know if it's my phone or my laptop. Not my laptop. It might be the phone or the TV. It'll just I think it's the phone. Will just flash for just a second. I'm like, Okay. Another occultist and spirit channeler championing the cause of Sirius, the dog star, in the 50s and 60s was well-known ufologist George Hunt Williamson, the pen name for Michelle Dobrenovich. Williamson authored the classic UFO book Other Tongues. Other Flesh, an extended treatise on the beneficence of the UFOnauts from Sirius, who supposedly provided mankind with civilization in the far distant past. Williamson treats this theme at length again in his book, Secret Places of the Lion, extolling the, quote, goodly company, the, quote, star people, children of light, who migrated to Earth, the dark star, the planet of sorrows, about 18 million years ago, and have worked ceaselessly and tirelessly in their gigantic task of acting as the creator's mentors to a backward fallen race. Williamson claimed that he had met these benevolent space friends and was, in fact, a member of the group of witnesses who claimed to have seen George Adamski contact a saucer craft and an alien being in the California desert. The alien warned him about the evil influence of the beings from Orion. Again, something just came up with Orion today. They're doing a $5 billion minerals deal, the U.S., whatever. It's not yet the Sovereign Wealth Fund. It's something else. Something that's been around for a while, and they're partnering with something called Orion. Gerald is saying the phones do 100% take photos randomly, that he's seen it demonstrated. Williamson, Orion's belt points to Sirius. There you go. Aquino resembles Jordan Maxwell. Is that a Maxwell? Of the Maxwells? I probably should know who Jordan Maxwell is. Williamson also rhapsodizes at length, but in a somewhat circumspect fashion, on the seemingly unrelated theme of Solomon's temple and the reappearance of the Messiah, hinting at certain secrets relating to same. Although it might seem like a digression, Williamson's treatment of the Messiah theme provides the solution as to his own and to others' secret orientation in ufology. Jordan Maxwell was a student of Manly P. Hall and a Freemason researcher. Interesting. Manly P. Hall came up a lot in, I think, when I was doing a show with Wheezy on Lincoln that's coming out soon. Drawing upon a selection of quotes from his book, Williamson maintains that throughout the entire history of the earth, the goodly company or the multitude of Christ's souls have incarnated in a group. Pharaoh was addressed as the king, the Ra, the sun. This signified his position as leader of the goodly company of star-born beings dedicated to the salvation of a planet. A special hereditary order of men was now created to keep a semblance of Aton, one God, worship amongst the Israelites. Although the greater light could not be theirs because they were not yet ready for it, a less spiritual worship was set up based on pagan ritualism that nevertheless was symbolic in its sacrifices, ceremonies, vestments, etc. The promise of an eternal king to arise out of David's family was repeated over and over again, to David, to Solomon, and again and again. There are references to the breaking of the bread and drinking of the wine as a symbol of the sacred repast. The wine represents the holy vine of David, and the bread the life and knowledge of God. Those children of the greater light who are descendants of the holy vine of David serve through the sacred repast, the life and knowledge of God. God made a covenant with David of an eternal dynasty. Again, I don't like reading this stuff. David and Bathsheba prepared the way for the coming of the master or the fulfillment in Israel. When Solomon ascended the throne of his father, he consecrated his life to the erection of a temple to God and a place for the kings of Israel. David's faithful friend Hiram, king of Tyre, hearing that a son of David sat upon the throne of Israel, sent messages of congratulations and offers of assistance to the new ruler. Now we are entering the twilight of the gods, when the final destruction of the old age will take place and man and the gods will be regenerated and reunited. Man will have revealed unto him a true vision of his eternal heritage, that earthly things may show him the nature of his spirit. I don't like this stuff at all. You know, it just pulls on all the threads that, I don't know. it's definitely profane, I guess. So saith George Hunt Williamson. But what do the Temple of Solomon, Hiram King of Tyre, the Holy Vine of David, the ancient manipulation of earthlings by space aliens, and the coming fulfillment in Israel have to do with Sirius the Dog Star? A surprisingly large amount, it turns out. A more recent version of essentially the same Sirius scenario is provided by the UFO contactee Oscar Magossi. I would say it's Magossi, Magocsi. Magossi. After contact with the extraterrestrials, Magossi believes that he has a mission to impart the wisdom of the Psycheans, Psycheans, members of the Interdimensional Federation of Free Worlds, whose base of operations is located near Arcturus. Magossi reports that humanity migrated from the Pleiades thousands of years ago, and that we and the Interdimensional Federation are at war against evil forces from Draconis. These dark forces, Magossi maintains, rely on human alien allies, the Illuminati secret society, whose mission is to assist in enslaving mankind through a long-term disinformation operation intended to portray them as forces of good hailing from the Orion Nebula. There are, Magossi claims, actual good guys from Orion. He dubs this faction the Lords of Light, but the Illuminati are a different bunch altogether. Magossi also maintains that a particular area of positive influence is Sirius. The intelligences there supposedly beaming telepathic transmissions intended to counteract the bad vibes of the dark forces. These guys in the chat are talking about the Lucis Trust, which has a prayer room in the UN, and it's super freaky. Yes, the land was donated by the Rockefellers. I really want to keep reading, but I'm going to wait for you guys. I can't finish now because I got to go tend to my little situation here. And really the thing would be that I would go in and like all the little birthday cupcake wrappers would be on the floor and I would have a sick giant baby. So I have to go deal with that. And but this was super fun chatting with you guys. Thanks for coming. And I really look forward to keeping going with this book. I mean, it's interesting. Anyway. All right. So what else do I have coming up in case you're listening to this in real time? I'm going to talk again to Marcel about a thesis he wrote about Sirius. Should be good. I haven't read it yet, but I assume it's going to be good. Anyway, give me some stars. Follow me on Substack. Monica Perez Show. Thanks, everybody.